Welcome to the Shared Path. I'm Maggie Linton. So very pleased to welcome one of the world's great storytellers for children of all ages, New York Times bestselling author Carmen Agra Deedy. She shares her latest joyful creation with the retelling of a folktale set in her native country of Cuba with Corina Felina. Welcome, Carmen.
Well, good morning, Maggie. I feel very welcome.
I'll tell you, it's a joy to meet you. Um, our paths almost crossed a couple of years ago when we were talking about the Smithsonian Library.
Yes.
And before we begin anything, let's talk about the importance of libraries and how it still is so important. They still are so important.
It is historically, and I mean historically, as in back to we're going to the Library of Alexandria, Hypatia, the great librarian, to our modern day libraries. They are and I love this word. It's just a wonderful word, and we don't use it very often. The agora. It means the meeting place, that great meeting place. And as a kid, for a lot of us, it was more than that. It was a sanctuary.
Well, you talk about speak getting kids to come in to your sanctuary. That's what your books do. How did you get started
Excellent.
writing and know that children were your target audience?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see if I can come up with at least a somewhat satisfactory answer. I'm a mom. I have three daughters, and I have a smattering of grandchildren. And I like children, and you either like them, I think, Maggie, or you don't. And if you do, it's great. Try and work with them because they need adults who don't condescend to them, who see them as they're somewhat small, fast, and feral, and very moist.
Yes.
And if you love them, and the other thing is they're truth tellers, which is the last thing you think of with a child. I'm not talking about doing something wrong and then trying to get out of it, trying to wiggle out of it and tell an untruth or a big fat lie, as we say. But a child will walk up to you and say, "What happened to your eye?" They will do it because they simply want to know. They want to know the truth. And they'll speak the truth a lot of times in ways that shock us. So
Unfiltered.
so I just happen to like children. I had children. I began Montessori training many years ago when I had my children at home and children at school. There was a lot of kids. There was a lot of little kids. That pretty much, yeah, that did me. And I felt like I lived in a shoe. But I think that my love of stories for children began conversely. In other words, when I was a child, and I was surrounded by such great storytellers. And
Go ahead.
no, no, please.
No, I was going to say, you moved to America from Cuba. And I won't say necessarily during the Great Migration, but there was a lot of influence that still remains with you this day from Cuba.
Well, I came with, I didn't come alone. I came with many children did, the Peter Pan children. I came with my parents and my sister, my older sister. And we were there for the first 4 years. And my parents, like most Cubans, supported the revolution. But then the firing squad started, and the students at the university, many of them disappeared. Things became very difficult. And my parents were always strong civil rights advocates, always. And they were fearful for us. So we were able to leave. We went through Mexico, which is a part of my memory that is really wonderful because in Mexico, we say Mexico, but it's Mexico. In Mexico, while we were there briefly, waiting for our visas to come here, we came in December of 1964. Do you want to hear this? It's about a 1 minute story. May I tell you this one?
Yes, please.
It's
I
very
mean,
dear.
I think it gives people a good background of who
Who you
you
are and why
are
you do what you
and
do.
why
All right.
you are doing
Okay.
what you do.
So we have left, and we literally have been strip searched, and we left. I don't do the politics; that's somebody else's business. But I know what's happening in my country, and I can speak to my lived experience. We were all strip searched. We could take nothing with us, not a suitcase, not a valise. And by the time we got to Mexico, we had some cousins who had a little tiny, like half apartment for us. There was enough food for one meal, which they'd given my parents a little money. So my parents were very careful. But every day we would walk through El Parque de Chapultepec Park, to go to the embassy. But one day my parents took a different route, and I was always so exhausted because I was little, and we were so stunted. We all had anemia. One day when they took this different route, there were some ladies, Mexican ladies, and they were sitting on the ground and they were making tortillas. They had a fire there. And if you've ever been to La Ciudad de Mexico, you've seen this. And I smelled the tortillas. Now I'm Cuban, so tortillas are not, but it didn't matter. I was so hungry. And remember, I'm 3. And remember the feral part about children? So I come running up. I do not remember this part. This is my mother's retelling. She said, I walked up to the woman and I went, she said, this lovely woman didn't miss a beat. Boom, put queso fresco, fresh cheese in it, folded it and handed it to me. Well, my mother panicked. She went over and she said, no, 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 señora, no hay dinero. You know, there's no money. And the woman didn't even look at her. Mommy said she was a mother to another mother. She just kept doing what she was doing, paused for a minute, went as if to say, it's not your business. Made a second tortilla and my sister came running up. Yeah. So after that day, for the weeks that followed, we would take the same route to the embassy. And my parents would sort of look around and pretend to, I don't know, investigate what was in the foliage. And my sister and I would run up and she would give us free tortillas. So now I go to schools. I am an old woman. I am a grandmother. And what do I see looking at me? The faces of many little children who tell me their stories of coming from Mexico. And life is funny. Round and round and round and round. It's an opportunity. I'm not feeding them tortillas, but I can feed them stories. And I go to
Feeding
about
their
100.
minds. You're
Feeding their
feeding their
souls.
minds and their
Perhaps,
souls.
perhaps,
Yeah,
but it isn't honestly. There's a lot of it's really easy when you speak publicly to do a lot of the, the false humility. Oh, it's not me, darling. No. But I can honestly tell you, it's the power of story. Story has fed us as human beings as far back as those cave dwellings. Now we think that somehow to tell a story is in a classroom, for example, is wasting time. That we maybe tell them among friends. Sometimes we tell jokes. Mostly we do memes. But our minds are wired for story, Maggie. And I have a great story to tell you if you want to hear it. Yeah, okay.
please.
This is about
It's
2 or
your
3 minutes.
platform.
No, it's yours, and you're graciously sharing. All right, so this one, I've only shared it recently. This happened before the pandemic. As a children's author, you visit schools. So I had to go to 100 to 125 schools a year, all over the US and Canada. And it's not glamorous. It's just, if you like it, you love it, it's glorious. So I've been doing this for 3 decades. I knew this school, hadn't been there in a while, but I knew it. So here's what happened. I park under a great oak tree. This is South Georgia. There's a small red Georgia clay road that led up to the school. This tells you that it's just kind of, it's a lovely small rural school. I go to the office. I know what to do. I check in with the person who runs the school, the secretary, and I hand them my license, a drop of blood for DNA. And she says, you know where the library is? And I said, absolutely. She said, well, the children are just so excited to see. And I thought, hey. Now, I was on my way to speak to 4th and 5th graders. I mentioned it was summer. There wasn't any school. This was a young authors conference. But when I reached the library, I could hear them. Already, before I saw them, Maggie, I knew something was off. In that instinctive way you have as you do your job, that's something, it's like a pebble in your shoe. I thought, what is that? I thought, the sound of their voices. That's not right. When I got to the door, there weren't any 4th and 5th graders. The floor was carpeted with pre-kindergarten. And it was like looking into a bucket of worms. They were just everywhere. Touchy, touchy, pokey, pokey. They were licking the baseboards. They were sucking their hair. They were banging each other across. And the teachers were all around the edges, surrounding the perimeter. And I thought, hey, wait. Well, this woman comes along the wall like this because there's no room to walk. And she has a lime green dress and a Crayola crayon necklace. And I know this is the librarian. She says, Carmen, something happened. I said, I could see it. What do you want me to do? She said, well, just tell a story. I said, okay, story will work. As I said earlier, Maggie, the story does its work. I have to get to a chair, and it's a director's chair, which is middle-aged woman and old lady entrapment. I mean, it'll snap on you like a cheap purse. To the amusement of the children, by the way, I think I won them over when that happened. So finally get in the chair, and I've knocked over like 3 posters, because posters all over the library, books, authors. As I begin the story, it takes a moment, but I know the story will do what it's supposed to do if I just trust it. And it rolls over them like a mist, and one by one, like little prairie dogs. Right? Except for one kid, because every teacher will tell you every year, every
always
presentation, there's one kid. And that little fella is right in front of me. He's at my feet. He's doing like this on my shoes. And he looks like a little man. Somebody has like slicked his hair down and parted it and put him in a little plaid shirt, button to the neck. He's got a belt.
An alfalfa look, huh?
He's like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, he's tiny, yes, but and the entire time I'm speaking, he's doing this. And then he starts whispering in that kind of weird way they do. It's all phonemes. And I'm thinking, finish the story, get it over with. I start dropping characters, entire scenes. We get to the end in record time. They all applaud because they're kindergarten. Or I mean, pre-K, not even kindergarten. I could have read them the phone book, by the way. They would have applauded. And then somebody in the back says, I don't think it was a pre-K teacher. I think this was a 4th or 5th grade teacher who was bitter. Okay, Maggie, I hear. Yeah. Do any of you children have a question for the author? Now, if you've ever worked with 4-year-olds, you don't ask them that.
Oh, no.
Because they don't understand a query. I got a puppy. Hands were just flying up. My daddy was, I mean, all over. And I'm thinking, oh, my word. However, one voice rose above them all, right in front of me. Hey, lady. I said, what could he possibly have to say? Lady. And from the very back of the room, in the other direction, we hear, everybody hears, Billy, no. But Billy is unquenchable. No, lady, Billy, no. This woman has to be his teacher. It was. She stands up. She's trying to make her way through this ocean of children. Billy keeps saying, lady, I have a question. And I think,
yeah.
Let him ask it. She's playing whack-a-mole as she's trying to cross. She's halfway to, she's never going to reach him in time. And so I look at her like that stupid look you give when you think you know something, like, don't worry, I'm a professional. Yeah, right. And she looked at me like, your funeral. So I said, Billy, what is it? And that sweet boy, this is a true story, looks at me, Maggie, looks behind me. Remember those posters? Yeah. At a poster of me from 1995 and says, how do you go from looking like that to looking like Billy? No. She is a gazelle. She leaps over the last 4 children, grabs Billy, out they go. And at the door, this is the end of the story. This child has no survival instinct. He's still wriggling. He's like a human chimera. And he says, lady, how do you? And I think any child that is so committed to knowing something, to truth, deserves an answer, right? So, yeah. I said, it's called oldness, Billy. And he says, oh, my teachers got that. They were gone. They were gone. Now, the reason I told you that story is because you were asking me about children and why some of us, many of us, love working with kids in the best possible way.
I tell you, you hit the nail so all the time with your books, your joy, your teaching, because you teach through a story. And boy, do you tell one this time with Corina Felina. Talk about that, because it's actually an old folktale reworked.
Yes.
And here comes the book. I love it.
Because I think Henry Cole, the illustrator, also, I want to make sure we mention him.
We're going to definitely talk about him, because he kept expanding Corina as he went.
Well, it's in the motif of an animal eats many things. So stories fall into categories. And there is literally a whole book about all the tale types and motifs. And now, so your viewers don't fall asleep on this one. trust me, it's worth it. It's worth knowing. Knowing is wonderful, right?
Every day.
Yeah. So a motif and a tale type will tell you, a tale type and motif will tell you what the story is and where it falls in the category and where you can find it. Say, girl walks into wood meets wolf, or other predator. That's got its own category. This book, this particular story, I found because I was looking for some stories in that world of eating things, cumulative. It's a cumulative story. It's like the house that Jack built. Okay, one thing builds on another, builds on another. And I found it in the what a time to have block. Oh, it's upstairs. It's right there at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, you'll come back to it.
All right. It's a collection. It's an
Yeah.
anthology of children's lit. And it's this long. It's one paragraph.
Wow.
But that's what folktales can do. See, folktales are in the public domain, and maybe a lot of people who are listening or watching don't know that. That means folk tales, folk, the people, tale, story, people stories, right? We've collected them since the beginning of time, and every culture has them. Some travel through cultures. This one, the version I found was from India, but I had heard it as a child in Cuba. I found it's also in Denmark, and it's in many countries, different versions of it. And what happens is each country adapts the story to their culture.
All right. Well, let's just give them a hint. We don't have to tell them everything about Carlina.
All right.
You
So
set it up. You tell how much you want to tell of it. Okay.
Very little, because I really would
Yeah,
like
I know.
Okay. So Carina Felina was a beautiful Russian blue cat, right, with a luxurious coat and bottle green eyes. And she lived near un perico, a parrot, whose name was Pepe. And Pepe was smitten. He loved everything about Carina, the sleek look of her fur, the way she moved and the sway of her hips. He sent her letters. They came back ripped to pieces. He sent flowers. They returned wilted. He didn't know what else to do. And one day, he decided to invite her to dinner. So this is a story about what happens when you fall in love with a cat and you invite her to come have supper, and you happen to be a parrot. Be careful when you reach out to a predator, because you might be the meal. And it's a cumulative tale. You'll know that in three pages. So I'm not ruining the story. Every person that challenges Carina, she'll say the same thing. I'm Carina Felina. I do what I like. I eat what I wish. Now out of my way, or you'll be my next dish. And then down they go. And so you keep adding one more character. And down went the florera to join the parrot, and on and on and on. And it has a surprising twist, which is part of the original tale. The least are the most among us in this story. Sometimes tiny things have big power.
Coming from Maryland, the final twist was really quite interesting for me.
Of course it would be.
You know what I mean?
Yes,
exactly.
They are familiar to you.
Exactly. But the Henry, as you mentioned, the illustrator, Henry Cole,
had a lot of fun.
Really brings the story to life. Talk about your collaboration with him.
Well, we only met once. We had met before, I should say that. Henry and I had met before, because you meet at conferences and so forth. Mm-hmm. And for any children watching this, authors and illustrators go places where grown-ups talk about books for you. And sometimes when we run across each other often enough, one of us or the other or both may say, I'd love to work with you. And that's what we did when we happened to share a stage. And so when this story came up with Scholastic, and they signed it on, I asked my wonderful editor, Diane Hess, if she could talk to Henry and see if he was interested. And he said he was. And then we had one, and this may surprise people, we had one Zoom meeting where we talked about the book. But the illustrators then allowed to go away and do their own work. You can have suggestions, you have ideas, you have things you would love to see or wouldn't love. And even that is unusual. Most of the time, you don't speak at all, author and illustrator. The story goes, they do it. Henry was very gracious to allow that little, that meeting and just an opportunity to talk a little bit about the story.
Well, it is his illustrations totally enhance every word that you put onto the page. and the story just flows as Karina.
Carina. And
Karina.
may I show them a spread?
Oh, sure.
Because that's fun, because you're talking about it. And it might be just
Exactly.
the perfect
And
moment.
thank you for the recipe in the back too. I haven't
Galletas
made it yet,
cubanas.
but I've had them.
You might want to do it a few times. My first
Yeah.
try was not good. It takes it well, it takes a while. Oh, come on. Where are you? There's one spread I really love. I would love for them to see.
There you go.
There they are. And that's quick peek. Quick peek,
Yeah.
so it doesn't ruin
And
anything.
the thing is, with so much going on, there's still so much detail that makes every individual be within their own, but also part of the crowd.
I think he made them, yes. He certainly gave each one a little bit of a personality.
Yeah, very
And
true.
and Henry's a wonderful illustrator and a great person. That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy that you enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
I
hope the
really did.
children enjoy it.
The other thing I loved about it, because we are such a multilingual society, you putting in the words both in Spanish and English and explaining what they were. And it's a way for kids to learn just a little bit more about a different culture.
I'm so glad you liked that. I
I
really
did.
am.
I love it. I just got back from the Dominican Republic and everybody
Oh,
says, "Do you speak Spanish?" I said, "No, I can count to 10. I know baños. I know buenos dias, good day,
buenos
that
días.
kind of stuff. I,
Gracias.
yeah, oh, definitely.
Restaurante.
Gracias. Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
You know, but I think it's always good to expand whenever you can.
Well, there's a lot of discussion, which we won't go into, about whether to include the definition. In other words, to say the word and then follow it with the English word. I'm a big believer in that because I think we're here to learn and to say, kind of from a place of sort of, well, let them look it up, or they should know. They're children. They probably will not go running to a Spanish English dictionary or even an adult necessarily. So I love that not only the Spanish speaking children who will encounter the word and go, ooh, I know that word, it's my language, to the English or Vietnamese or whatever language they may speak, Farsi, other children will go, huh, that's what that means. And the best part of all, Maggie, when teachers, and I talk to teachers all the time and say, please be brave, be bold. If your intentions are good and you love these children, do not worry if you don't pronounce it perfectly. In fact, it's better if you don't, because if you say alacran and the children go, no, no, senora, it's not alacran, it's alacran, they get to be a hero. So I think there are lots of good reasons for it. I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Oh, I did. I just think whenever we can learn, we should, and not being under a blanket and in denial. It doesn't do us any good. Um, the
By
other
the way,
thing
I love the Dominican Republic.
uh, I had a good time. The people were
Oh, oh,
so precious. They were so wonderful, and the food. Oh my goodness, it was really, really, really good. Really good. Yeah,
lucky
and
duck.
they were so proud of their history and how they're the third country founded in the Americas.
Yes,
And we know which was number one, right?
we do.
Cuba. Yes,
Yeah, it was.
exactly.
It was.
Exactly. But
But
that's again something I learned. That's why I enjoy travel so much.
that's
What you,
because you have an open mind.
yeah.
And see, the one thing that we can give children, and I know I keep going back to children, but I write
Mhm.
for children, is to foster curiosity. A curious mind is never bored, never. A curious mind will grow exponentially in knowledge because it wants to know more. So that it's an inverted pyramid. It's going to know more and more and more, even if they don't have the benefit of university or whatever. The other thing is a curious mind really, I feel like it never grows old because it's always having new information that keeps you young, that keeps you excited about the world and interested in the people in it. But I don't have any strong feelings about that.
Well, I tell people I learn something new every day. Just
Oh,
talking
I
to
can
you today, I've
see.
learned a couple of other things. So
So
that's
have I.
what it's really all about. All right, you got some appearances coming up. This is getting ready to be a busy time for you with storytelling festivals. I know you're going to the Mississippi Book Festival in
That's a book
August.
festival. That's a book
Yeah, it's
festival.
book
Yep.
festival, but you've got some storytelling festivals coming up. But I know you're still going to tell stories no matter which place you're going to appear.
I hope so. Every great orator used story. Every great religious leader used story. Story and parable, myth and legend, it's the way that truth gets in. It's sort of like the old Cohen song. It's how the cracks are how the light gets in. In a way, story is that too, Maggie. And I hope I'll tell stories. I'm in Mississippi because the de Grummond is one of the most wonderful children's books collections. De Grummond is there, and they're wonderful people. And I can say it now, I was on the Ezra Jack Keats committee for 3 years. So I had the connection with them, and they're good people really doing great work for kids.
Of course, everybody can find
I'm
out
going to
where you're
plug them.
going through your website, which
Yes.
is just delightful. I love all the magnificent book covers and appearances and how you open yourself and encourage children to get in contact.
Yeah. And they do.
Billy,
Billy, no, best email I ever, it wasn't an email, that's a lie. Best letter I ever got was a kid in the fourth grade said, "Dear Carmen Deedy, thank you for coming to our school. We laughed, Laught. We laughed so hard, Casey's retainer fell out." It's on my desk because laughter is the other thing that we have a dearth of right now.
very true. It hurts nothing to be kind, to share laughter, and to share love. And you lift all of us up with your beautiful books. And you may be writing for children, but the lessons are for all of us, no matter what age we are.
Oh, Maggie.
But what else do you have coming up? Are you working on another wonderful
Um,
story?
yes, I have another book coming next year with Raul Colon in English, who is a
Thank you.
magnificent, thank you, you're welcome. Another great illustrator. I think he was a New Yorker Illustrator of the Year. And it's called The
Oh,
Peanut Man. And it's my story of coming from Cuba. So it's my refugee story.
all right.
We'll
Well,
see.
listen, Carmen, so good to meet you and to chat with you. I wish you nothing but success.
The
Once
same.
again, many thanks to New York Times bestselling author Carmen Agra Deedy. Her latest, Carina Felina, can be found
Bellissimo.
at booksellers everywhere. And of course, lots more at her beautiful website, carmenagradidi.com. Once again, that's carmenagradidi.com. Until next time, seek peace and spread lots of love. I'm Maggie Linton.
Oh.